Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Real Talk with Rick. I have a guest named Rick. Rick Clark is coming on Real Talk with Rick to talk about the division that he manages for Eden Prairie, our facilities division. He talks about what the facilities division is, all that they support here for the city of Eden Prairie, and he also talks about some of the sustainable work that his team and the city have embarked upon when it comes to buildings and grounds, what COVID means for his job, his world in the city, and then we also get a little bit of glimpse into what he does, what he enjoys in his spare time as well. So you want to listen for the second half of the conversation where we have interesting discussion on some of his hobbies and what he likes to do when he's not here at the city of Eden Prairie. So here is my conversation with Eden Prairie Facilities Division Manager Rick Clark. All right, Rick Clark, Eden Prairie Facilities Manager. Thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here.
Facilities, that's kind of a general term. Describe for us what facilities in the city of Eden Prairie is.
Yeah, definitely a general term. I mean, we cover a broad spectrum. So essentially, we maintain and improve over 30 of the major buildings throughout the city. It's equaling just short of 1 million square feet. We're also supporting all the other departments throughout the city. And that maintaining is quite literally from the curb of the entrance to the building to the roof and everything in between. So that's HVAC, plumbing, electrical, lighting, cleaning contracts, lawn and snow, fire, life, and safety systems. This branches out into the community center where we do all of the ice rink maintenance and pool maintenance. Thermal imaging cameras with roof inspections, electrical inspections, and then, of course, new construction, remodeling, and our capital projects throughout the city.
You guys do a ton.
Yeah.
And I know places that I've been, the terms were buildings and grounds. I know that when I was in Hopkins, facilities came out of the Public Works Department.
Yep.
And so we are unique in that you're a completely separate division. You're a part of administration. So when we talk to people about administration, you would say, human resources and IT. But for us, too, that includes facilities and administration through Alicia,
Yep.
our administration and HR director. But it's just interesting. I think more cities are starting to carve out their own facilities division, but we've had this for 15 years or so, I think. I mean, I know this, that you're only the second manager that the division has had.
Yeah.
Paul Stika, who hired you,
Right.
Was the manager before you in this position when we created the division 15 or so years ago. So tell me a little bit about then kind of what you covered the gamut, basically anything on like I said, the buildings, the grounds, the facilities, everywhere from a fire station to the community center to City Hall to the senior center. Actually, too, I don't know, maybe I missed this. Our historic properties.
Yeah, we've got our historic properties.
You guys deal with all that. So, how many people in the division, and how was it set up then?
Yeah, so we've got a total of 25, 9 being full-time, and 16 being part-time. So you've got, it should be 10 full-time if you include myself. So how it's structured, you've got myself as a manager, you've got a property services supervisor, and an engineering supervisor. So the best way to kind of describe those two is your grounds and the appearance for the property services, and the engineering would be the HVAC side. Then you've got 3 engineers. Those are, I would equate them for people listening like a 5-year journeyman in HVAC profession, or anyone in the union. And then 3 technicians as well, and these guys' skill sets, we're lucky to have them, are very high. I mean, we've got someone that's been here for 20 years who's kind of just the jack of all trades that knows absolutely everything to a guy that could literally build houses. We just hired our third full-time technician, and he's previously a full-time mechanic. So now we've kind of really got this whole spectrum. And then we've got our facility specialist, who's like our coordinator, who kind of just gets us all going in the right direction, make sure everything that is scheduled correctly, as well as works with a lot of the inside and outside rentals that we get throughout the building, since we rent a lot of the spaces here. And then 2 part-time staff that are in our City Hall building, and the other 14 are all at the community center, essentially doing setups and ice Zamboni maintenance and just general maintenance throughout the building.
Yeah, Zamboni drivers.
Yep.
I talked a little bit too about historic properties, because I think maybe when you thought about a position like this, you get a feel and understanding for HVAC and roofs and elevators and mechanical equipment and in landscaping and parking lots. But I don't know how much you dealt with historic properties before, but
not much. A little bit just on the real estate side, getting into the Minneapolis, the older duplexes and triplexes, but I'd say the historic properties side, when I got into this position, or when I first started working with Eden Prairie, was probably the most interesting, I would say. Whether you kind of like it or not, it almost turns into like a passion project kind of item.
Yeah, Cummins. I've seen you've been a big part of the Cummins Grill House work, and the Smith Douglas Moore House with Smith Coffee, the Riley Barn.
Yeah, they're just cool properties when you get into them, and seeing what was established before I even started working here. The fact that the city takes such a role in keeping them up to date and wanting to preserve their historic properties it's just it's an interesting and fun different side of what you would expect here.
Yeah. Another thing too, when you talk about a lot of the work that everybody does in a lot of different communities, a lot of what you described is contract work.
Yeah.
Someone will be employed by the city, and we do have a lot of contract work, but still, if it's anything beyond a setup or cleaning or some other minor facilities work, a lot of other cities, or Eden Prairie years in the past, would bring in these mechanics, would bring in these facility engineers at, I think, a pretty expensive price to do update on mechanical equipment. So I think the proposition for us has honestly been how much money we've saved by actually having in-house experts. And it's almost a flipping of the duties, where we actually hire the more experienced facilities engineers, and we might actually hire out cleaning and some of the mowing and plowing in the buildings.
That's exactly how it's set up. So essentially, like, the simplest way to put it is we're kind of set up almost like a private business or an HVAC or maintenance company, where in the fields of HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, those are always going to be your most expensive costs. So if you get skilled workers that are able to handle that part, you're going to see your biggest savings, let alone even with the savings, the service side of it. If you have a problem going on, we can have somebody there in a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, if not even sooner.
Yeah.
Whereas depending if it's a 95-degree day with 90% humidity, you might not be able to get somebody out there for 3 days because they're so busy everywhere else. Yeah. So even along with the savings, the service is, substantial.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and our community center is a huge asset, right? So you talked about people actually being stationed out of there.
Yeah.
Because that's so much mechanical, right? With 3 rinks and the big, we did the pool addition. You guys played a huge part in the addition. But talk a little bit about the community center. That's a big deal.
Yeah, the community center is a beast, especially after that expansion was done, and luckily we got to have a vital part in that actual expansion, to have a lot of input on some of the systems that went into there. But it's you're just, I think we're about 700,000 gallons of water there, 225,000 square feet, 3 sheets of ice, fitness floor. There's about 6 or 7 meeting rooms that are, birthdays. So at one point, you can have birthday rentals going on, a tournament with 3 sheets of ice, as well as an aquatics event. So there's always going to be...
And me on the basketball court.
And you on the basketball court. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bob Lanzi playing pickleball on the other side.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
There's essentially going to always be a pretty heavy facilities staff there. Our part-time is going to be 3 people or 2 people minimum, even if it's a slow day, just to facilitate the help. Because we get a lot of calls from the front desk for items that pop up. It's our patrons and the front desk staff that will notice a lot of things for us and call us into action. But there's also the 3 part-time staff that will essentially be there, a full-time technician, a full-time engineer, and also our facilities supervisor of engineering there that are staffed in office there.
Located there.
The 3 full-time staff that are there, they basically office out of there and can rotate anywhere, but that's where their main focus is.
Sure.
That's where they start their morning, make sure that the building and all the systems, all the schedules, that everything's going to go smooth through the day.
Which they always do. Nothing unexpected ever happens. Nothing unexpected happens.
No, in the world of maintenance, nothing unexpected
ever happens.
No.
So, in your time here, and we're going to go back and talk about how you came to be here, and you were, promoted to be manager when the manager left. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you've had since you've been here? What are some of the things that maybe surprise you, or that you've really been some big challenges you guys have had to tackle?
Yeah, I think some of the big challenges, in this field, essentially, your challenges are every single day. I mean, getting into this field, it's part of the fun, and that's part of what you're looking for, is to be challenged, to not have something that's mundane. Every day's never going to be the same. There'll be days here and there that are just your regular maintenance, but it's pretty much guaranteed that something large will break eventually. Everything is mechanical, or something's going to pop up. But, besides the COVID-19 timeframe is obviously a standout for a big difference.
Yeah. We'll go into a whole COVID piece. That's true.
We can definitely dig into that. But, the solar project was something new for the city.
Yeah.
And I came in right in the middle of that. So that was a big learning experience for me, as far as the business side as well as the actual install side, and the feasibility of it all, and which really triggered my brain into thinking, where else can this stuff go as well? Yeah. And that was something I really enjoyed.
So let's first talk about sustainability, then we'll talk about COVID. So in the sustainability piece, since the day that the division was formed, around that time, the mayor at that time, Nancy Lukens, made a big point of pushing sustainability from an internal point of view. Mm-hmm. So for about 10 years, 2005 to 15, we were challenged to find sustainable initiatives within our facilities and within our fleet. So with both the building and our fleet and our fuel, we saved quite a bit. What we had not gotten around to within that time frame, because there were a lot of HVAC improvements and energy improvements that were made and fleet improvements that were made, but it wasn't until the tail end of that, like you said when you came on, that we said let's go as much solar as we can.
Yeah.
And at the same time, let's start talking about more sustainability community-wide as well, not just internal to the buildings of the city, but outside commercial buildings, home energy squad visits at people's homes, reducing our carbon footprint with waste as well, not just energy, but that's separate from this. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Since you've been here, we've done this outlay of solar on this building here that we're in City Center, the maintenance facility, the water treatment plant. In the future, we'll be talking about fire stations, and we've got to finish the community center. So that's been a big deal.
Yeah, it has been. It was a fun project to be part of too, and I look forward to doing more of it.
Yeah. And there have been. I mean, what would you say would be some other cost-saving, cost-effective changes you guys have made over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so over the last couple of years, a lot of it has been our HVAC improvements that we have done, and a big part when we're now looking forward to doing more of the HVAC replacements as items come up. is, you could say not here, but in general years past, a lot of HVAC replacements would just be a like-for-like scenario. Now, when we look at this, when we have something that's aging out or failing, we look at the entire system as a whole. And it's not just replacement of that unit. We look at it as what can be rethought of and done completely different to help improve the efficiency of the entire building. And that may be more encompassing of just replacing that unit, but if it saves money and time and efficiency down the line, then it's something that we really start to dig into and look at the whole system as a whole. We've done a lot of LED lighting throughout our city as well.
Yep.
And we're looking at a few large projects, being community center and city center, that are coming up, and they're in our capital improvement plan now.
All LED.
All LED, completely. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's a big savings and a very fast payback as far as a business standpoint as well.
Yeah, faster than it was before, because we're seeing even it's interesting, the LED internally to buildings, you don't hear a lot about, but we actually had a few people it took a while to get used to the LED lights that are outside.
Yeah.
And maybe not so much in a parking lot
either,
but because we did some parking lot lights a while back, but it's a different light. It's a different type of light.
It is a different type of light, but we're coming in at a good time to do this because technology's advanced so much that they're able to do a much better job than years previous to match exactly what the light output is, the color, and the projection of how far the light comes. So there's a lot of technology advancements
that's been improving. Because like you said, I think it's kind of considered a starker, maybe brighter light within a narrower span. That it wouldn't just go over.
And that's a big part of what our spec will call out, is for it to be in the same band as the fluorescence, the same Kelvin, which is essentially the color and light output as well.
Interesting.
Yep.
Color is Kelvin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
With this K?
Yep.
Yes. Oh, yeah. COVID. It has changed, obviously, everyone's world. And there was a period of time, when City Hall here was closed, that, we did a couple different podcasts with, the fire chief and the economic development manager. But I thought, I was thinking to myself, I definitely wanted to have you on, but you guys played a huge role in, how we managed when it first happened and we had to close and clean and, change probably some of the air handling systems, but then also what to do when we reopen and what's happening now as we're all masked and socially distant and keeping everything clean. So from your world view, Rick, take me through that. Take me through kind of when it first happened in March, of what you guys were doing and what you've done to date.
Yeah, so first and foremost, our facilities division, is to provide a safe and enjoyable workspace for everybody, all of the employees, all the patrons, citizens, everybody that comes into our building. And that's really where it started when this happened, was, we manage the cleaning contracts. So first and foremost was to assess into our cleaning contracts to make sure that they followed all of the CDC guidelines, which we have great cleaning contracts in place, great contractors that we work with. We are already above the CDC guidelines, so we just increased our due diligence to make sure that everything was being touched. From there, it got into, there were some requests for outside vendors to do fogging in some of our buildings, and it came at a substantial cost. So internally in our facilities division, we started looking at what the possibility was to do that ourselves, to provide that service internally. And we were
what is fogging? How does that work?
Yeah, so fogging is it's essentially atomizing a liquid chemical into the air that disinfects the air as well as the surfaces that it lands on. So, if you were to watch it, it would quite literally look like something between a fogging machine you'd see at like a concert and like a mister of some sort.
Sure.
And it's there's also electrostatic spraying that we're doing as well now too, which is actually electrically charged, so it sticks to surfaces. Beyond that, a lot of plexiglass went up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you did a great job. I mean, it wasn't just grab some plastic and tape it together. You did some great work.
Yeah.
It looks very professional. Liquor stores. You started with the liquor stores. That was probably the first place because we never closed the liquor stores.
That was absolutely the first place.
Yeah.
Yep. So our guys, kudos to, like they say, you're only as good as you are surrounded by the people you're with. Mm-hmm. That was directly our technicians came up with the idea to put holes in the plexiglass and hang it up, and they were able to get the stuff from Home Depot before anybody else, and Home Depot essentially ran out of it to basically be seamless at the liquor stores.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, you're a purchaser too, so wouldn't there be a run on plexiglass and cleaning supplies and the hand sanitizer? You got all that stuff.
Yeah,
you weren't you? I think you had to buy, or we did buy. I mean, some of the stuff by the barrel.
Yes. Yep. At one point, we were buying hand sanitizer, liquid hand sanitizer, and liquid disinfectant by the barrel. Because it was, and this kind of goes back to your previous question on some of the difficulties, I would say the most difficult part of this COVID-19 timeframe was sourcing any kind of materials, especially cleaning. Hand sanitizer, all of your...
And not getting gouged, not getting ripped off, knowing that you have a reputable vendor.
Exactly, yeah. And losing those reputable vendors, because not so much that our supply chain from them would get intercepted, but two supply chains that they get it from get intercepted, and they get truckloads that get intercepted and no longer are getting delivered to them.
Wow.
So immediately, constantly sourcing other vendors, checking that they're reputable themselves, as well as getting onto the EPA list end to make sure that all of the stuff that we have was for use against SARS-CoV-2. That was a job in and of itself to go through every single product that we use to make sure that it was on that list and that immediately as soon as that was put out. And then foregoing everything that we get from there.
Yeah, well, so we talk. Yeah, you got plexiglass at your. There, you have such a the city has such a varied level of service. So you have police and fire that have to continue to be out in the field and work, and they need PPE, and the liquor stores are open. But then we closed our community center and our city hall. Our senior center, our art center, and some of those are still closed. But like the city center and community center, have now reopened as well. So you're sourcing this material, but you're also prepping these buildings for reoccupancy.
Yeah. So we're getting when these buildings closed, not only did we kind of do deep clean and disinfecting sweeps through the building to get them prepared for the time that they would reopen at a time that we didn't know when they would reopen. We immediately jumped into sourcing plexiglass shields that are professionally made. Essentially, like we talked about, the supply chain of Home Depot, getting it from there was gone. So we kind of wanted to get these buildings set up before they would open ready. So we met with the other department heads and managers and kind of got an idea and a game plan of how they might open, get all of the plexiglass set up, help with social distancing signage, figure out kind of capacities, inflows, outflows, floor signage. We were, I would say, fortunate that, we got on a lot of this stuff early and kind of really took the aspect of wanting to provide the safest and best ways of inflow and outflow of the buildings, as well as still be able to operate. And that's kind of the route that we took. So we ordered a lot of the stuff that we would need ahead of time so that we were ready for this. And that's essentially the plexiglass, the signage, and a lot of cleaning product.
Yeah, and we're using it all, and we're still getting it.
We're still getting it, yeah. And we switched a little bit as far as, from and correctly to kind of make facilities the central repository of all inventory for your hand sanitizer, your wipes, basically for each individual employee to use and feel safe during this time.
What else have you seen that's different with maybe operations at the community center or working with our vendors? What else has been happening? I still see our vendors that are in here working, so it hasn't.
Yeah, as far as like the direct HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, they were all deemed essential right from the get-go. So we did still, somewhat slow down on some other vendors that would be coming in, especially when the building was closed, just to make sure that we had kind of our own protocols and correct procedures in place before we open the doors to kind of back to normal as far as the maintenance side goes. As well as for the remainder of 2020, we're not doing, so facilities will typically do and manage garden room rentals, heritage room rentals, these spaces that we have in our buildings for the city center.
Yeah.
And, we won't be having any outside
Right.
rentals for the remainder of 2020.
Right. Yeah, we're still using the rooms for some internal meetings, but you're right.
Yeah, because that's another thing is, our smaller conference rooms could no longer facilitate what we need internally.
Yeah.
So we kind of had to move into the bigger spaces that we would typically rent out.
Okay. So you're, 8, 9, 10 years old, out in California, riding a dirt bike or you're doing many different things out there, and you're saying to yourself, 10, 15 years from now, I'm going to be the Eden Prairie facilities manager, right? That's how you got here. You knew at that time.
Yeah. I was. I could see the future at the time, and I knew that's exactly where I was going to land.
Yeah. So, but you did. You did not. So we're going to talk about you a little bit. Where'd you grow up?
I think at 10 years, I was actually, it was probably the typical. I was somewhere between a police officer and a forensic scientist, which is strange.
That's what you wanted to do.
Somewhat related things.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Some, there's some cops that are, do forensics too, so you could combine the two. But yeah, so that's what that didn't happen though.
No, that didn't happen.
No, you get to hang out in the police department though.
I do get to hang out in the police department. Yeah, and I've got, California till I was 10 years old. Should we go full story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so California till I was 10 years old. We moved out initially to Mankato, Minnesota, for about a month or two, then to Egan, and finally where I basically landed from pretty much 10 years old till 18 is Hopkins School District area. Yeah. Gatewood Elementary, West Junior High, then Hopkins High School.
Yeah, because you graduated a couple years before I came there as city manager.
Yes.
Yeah, you were born the year Johnny's favorite album by Van Halen was made. But by the time you graduated school, but 2003, I think that was.
Correct.
High school.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, so basically you grew up here.
Yeah, everything that I kind of essentially would learn as a child and a teenager growing up was here. My core group of friends who are my family is here. At the time it was just myself and my mom that moved here. Yep. No other family here. So immediately after high school, I moved back to California to pursue a business that my father had been in for his entire life. It was a race shop doing dirt bikes and jet skis and building motors, and eventually that kind of translated into the Yamaha Rhinos, Polaris Razors.
So all those, when you say race shop, so the people that it's service and not sales. It's all service.
All service.
And these are people that compete in events, like higher end events.
Yep.
Or just can afford toys like that.
Can afford, both, right?
Okay.
So we had a couple professional watercraft racers that we sponsored.
Okay.
And to the point there's a jet ski world finals that happened at Havasu in Arizona.
Yep.
And we were actually on tour for a couple years with Yamaha, back when Yamaha had their kind of big jet ski teams, and my dad was their lead mechanic. And, it was ran by a good friend of his who owned the actual team. And we traveled all around from California to all the way across the United States to Florida, doing kind of the jet ski race tour circuit.
How does a jet ski race work?
Yeah, so at the time, I haven't watched it for years, but
Yeah,
because
I'm trying to picture, because I can picture jumps,
yeah,
but I don't know how you win a jet ski race.
It's not a viewer-friendly spectator. It's not a spectator sport in the long run, which is probably why it essentially died off.
Yeah,
but,
I'm not making fun of it. I mean, make it sound like I'm putting out. No,
yeah.
but I'm just trying to picture. I won a jet ski competition. What did I do? Was I graded on something? It's not that I beat someone to another point in the water.
Racetrack around buoys.
Okay.
In the water. And you actually start out, there's a string line right in front of you got 12, 15 people. And you've actually got two people holding on to the back of the jet ski. And the rider is pretty much holding it as wide open as these two people can hold. It's kind of getting the motor going.
Oh, okay.
The string line breaks, you let go, and you go. And it's just a bunch of left turn, right turns around buoys for 10, 20 laps.
Yeah.
The stand-up jet skis that you can stand up and kneel down, they would typically go over some tires, maybe through, and kind of do a little jump over the tire, but nothing really spectacular. There's some ocean races that happen that got a little more interesting, but I was never part of those.
Yeah, not oceans necessarily, but maybe we could talk to Jay and we can like set up a competition on like Bryant Lake or Lake Riley.
Yeah,
we could manage a jet ski race.
Manage a jet ski race
on one of our lakes.
Yeah, my interest was definitely more dirt bikes as things progressed and got older.
But for a while, you and your dad are traveling the country.
Yeah.
You're 18, 19, 20 years
now,
old.
This was, I guess, my timeline's horrible here, but this was actually, so obviously I lived out here through my teenage years, but pretty much majority of summers were spent back in California.
Okay.
So I was 13, 14, and I think it died off when I was 15 years old.
That's pretty fun, though.
It was a good time.
That's a good time.
Yeah.
That's a good way to spend your summer.
Yeah.
And then you come back to Hopkins High School. It's like, what'd you guys do this year?
Yeah, it was. I got to travel around, and there was one of the summers that I rode around in the truck with them, so that was an interesting journey. We saw some interesting people in some different parts of the country that I'd never been to. So...
Are you talking about like Arkansas or?
Yeah, Galveston, Texas was the one that's triggered in my mind. But yeah.
Memories of Galveston.
Yeah.
So dirt bikes, you said too? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, dirt bikes were a big part of my life, definitely, and to the point where I think when I moved back to California, there was a short stint where I thought I was going to be a freestyle motocross guy.
Yeah.
And that quickly realized after a couple crashes that wasn't going to work out. But it was still, doing a lot of big jumps, a lot of free riding. We'd go out to the Glamis sand dunes and just free ride with a good 10, 15 people out there and set up as big a jumps as we could possibly get our bikes to go.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then the dream ended. Yeah,
the dream ended. The economy took a hit, and I noticed that the working at that shop, when essentially people's first things that they're going to get rid of are their toys, and our whole business was derived from toys, wasn't going to last. And I had a good, who turned in to be a friend, but a customer at the time who had been kind of chirping in my ear for a number of years about looking into HVAC, because he just knew that I enjoyed mechanics, I enjoyed the electrical and a little bit more technical side of things. And that's really what kind of started me looking into it and brought me back here, which is home for me now.
Yeah.
To go to Dunwoody.
Yeah. So because you had, been here since you were 10 years old. So you came back, went to Dunwoody, and then got your first job, right?
Yep. Got my first.
Which wasn't here. Was not here.
Was not here. Nope. It was at McCoy at the time, which is now Daikin, who is actually a company that we do utilize as a contractor in the city as well. We've got a few of their units. So I worked for Daikin for 4.5 years before coming to the city as an engineer.
Yeah, and then you started here as an engineer, and then when we had an opening with the manager position, you interviewed for that, and you were hired for that.
Yeah, but I think it was about 1 year into working here, and for a few years before that, I'd been doing some home flips and remodels with a good friend of mine that I started a business with, and that translated into me getting my real estate license, which then grew into doing some investments and managing properties, which is kind of where you get into the world of more of the facilities manager.
Yeah. So my wife would like you because she spends a lot of time watching that, the house flipping,
I was
the
gonna say,
house
which one?
buying. Yeah, there's like a ton of them, and they keep changing and they morph.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a hobby of yours.
It's definitely a hobby of mine.
Maybe more than a hobby. Maybe a second income.
I mean, it's definitely definitely started out as a second income and still essentially is. But it's something that I do it because I enjoy it.
Yeah. Where have you bought? Where have you purchased most of your properties?
Yeah. So I started out. The
rehab.
First one was in Crystal. Actually, the first 3 were in Crystal.
Yeah.
So I've been in Crystal, St. Louis Park, New Hope, Northeast Minneapolis, a few in Victoria, Hopkins.
When you said
Hennepin County, yeah.
And you said a partner, so it's a matter of how would you find the properties? Would it be foreclosures or would it be estates? How would you find them?
So at the time, it was foreclosures and door knocking.
Door knocking.
Yeah, door knocking on people's houses and offering them cash because you have an investor who's cash backing you.
The door knocking on houses that you know are for sale?
Door knocking on houses that you know are possibly going to be going through sheriff sale soon.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and essentially...
Hi, I heard you might be having a sheriff sale.
Yeah.
I'm here. Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. You get...
Do you get the hell out of my yard?
Yeah.
Or why don't you come in my living room and let's talk?
Yeah,
Both, right?
You got it often. Yeah. But then there were houses that we found on the market too as well, especially back then because there was a large inventory. Now it's reversed. Now there's a low inventory,
yeah,
and a high demand. So.
Yeah. So then, kind of targeting those,
yeah,
getting a good price, and then, you had a threshold? Would it be a matter of this is too much work?
Yep. So the threshold. What you'd essentially look for is, you don't want to do foundation work. You don't want to do roof work. You're always going to end up, just by nature of these older houses and today's trends that you look at, you're basically going to look for a house that, okay, I'm going to do the flooring. I'm going to knock down the wall between the living room and the kitchen, and I'm going to remodel the kitchen, the bathroom, paint, flooring, maybe trim, and that's the end of it there.
Yeah, and typically, would you look for a certain style of home? Would it be Ramblers, or would it be...
It'd be that 1950s and 1960s Rambler.
Yep.
And then if you get into St. Louis Park, you get the story and a half.
Yeah, the Tudors.
Yep. And if you can... A lot of those story and a half Tudors in St. Louis Park, if you can manage essentially putting a bathroom to create an actual master in that upstairs half story, that's where you kind of get the big win.
Smaller kitchens,
yep.
The half baths, making them full baths.
Exactly.
Bedrooms in the basement with a...
Yeah, with a egress window.
Egress window?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But you never lived in these. They'd just be...
I did live in a couple. So
did you?
That was after I kind of gained the experience working with that first initial partner. I broke off on my own and did a house in Crystal, and then I bought my first house in Crystal and remodeled it myself. And after 2 years, you can avoid the capital gains tax by homesteading it for 2 years.
That's right.
Yeah. So I've done that for 2 houses now: Crystal, St. Louis Park.
Okay. So, what's the I don't know if I want you to tell me percentage wise or dollar wise the best deal that you had. What was the best? Bought it at this, sold it at this after putting this much in.
It would probably be the Victoria house, and we bought that bank owned at about $600,000 and put 70 into it, and are closing on it September 30th for just short of 900.
Really?
Yeah.
And so 70,000 is I mean that's not a big flip. That's not a ton of work.
This was a lucky one that we got. It needed paint, carpet. I mean, it's a 6,500 square foot house in Victoria.
Wow.
So, but otherwise, your typical, you're working with about a $30,000 to $40,000 profit.
Profit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what you look for. If it's
and more the inner ring, the more inner ring home.
And obviously, you can increase that profit if you do some of the labor yourself. But
3 biggest lessons you learned in doing this.
3 biggest.
Yeah, or 1 or 2 big lessons.
Yeah,
like don't do this or do this.
Yeah. stay out of the old foundation houses in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And that kind of ties right into the second one, which I'm basically done working on houses that are pre-1950.
Okay.
And don't partner with anybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you need to, right?
Yeah.
People need to pool their money together, but
Right. And an investor partnership is one thing. A direct, whatever percentage split with an actual partner who's you're splitting up job duties with is different.
Yeah, that is. Like, you're giving me money, and you're going to get this money back versus we're going to both do the work, and when you don't do the work, we have a problem.
Exactly.
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just surmising.
Yeah,
All
which
right.
I've been lucky. None of that has actually been, negative for me, but
It can be.
It can be, and, we dissolved that and went our separate ways before that ever became a problem.
Yeah.
And that's just because I wanted to be the sole as well as him.
Completely.
Yeah.
So, in terms of what you do in your spare time, that's a big one. Yeah. What about the dirt bikes, the snowmobiles? Are you still a fan of the?
So snowmobiles now is my big thing.
Okay.
And it's even, how the dirt bikes, I guess, essentially died off. Besides, when I moved back to Minnesota, there's not many places to ride if you don't own land. But the snowmobiles became such a prevalent thing in my life to the point where I did go back to getting a dirt bike. And I think I lasted about 30 hours on it. I entered into a hare scramble race in Cambridge, Minnesota. It was a 2-hour race. I think I made it to an hour and 55 minutes.
Close to the end.
Really close to the end.
Right.
And, crashed and tore up my knee. But the whole point of getting that dirt bike was so I could be in better shape for snowmobile season. And, my snowmobiling, that's...
So people have to be in shape for snowmobiling?
Yeah, so that's...
Really?
So
I thought it's like fishing.
Right.
I thought you just sit and...
It very much is, yeah. So typical Minnesota or Wisconsin snowmobiling would be just that. You're going from one fishing hole, one bar to the next, or you're going 100 miles an hour down the trail.
Yeah. What do I have to be in shape for?
Yeah. So I got into, I always told my friends out here, because I obviously grew up out here in snowmobile, that once they make a snowmobile like a dirt bike, I'll finally buy one. And that did happen. I think I bought a 2010 Skidoo for my first snowmobile, and guys who are old school in snowmobile are going to hate me for saying that. So,
yeah,
because I didn't get to have the snowmobiles of no suspension days. But I went and took that out to the UP with a group of buddies, and we hit it at the right time where there was a lot of snow, and I instantly fell in love with the powder aspect. So that snowmobile ended up getting stolen while I was there.
Really?
Yep. I had insurance on it, so the cop in Houghton told me that snowmobile would not be coming back, which it never did. So I immediately went to the dealership and bought a crossover, which is a mountain and a trail sled. And since it was a crossover, I said, hey, why not? I'm going to go figure out a way to go ride in the mountains. I found a group that comes out of Michigan in a semi-truck, drives from Michigan, picks people up in Chicago, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and brings you out to the mountains. Now, they're not like a guide setup. They just transport you, your snowmobile, put you up, and feed you breakfast and dinner. They kind of have set up with restaurants in town.
Okay.
And they bring you to all these different locations in the mountains. And I started riding out there in the mountains, got immediately addicted to it. The first week I was out there, the owners of this kind of company, or now it's technically a club for legality reasons, were just similar-minded people as myself, and we kind of clicked and became friends. I now go out with them. I try to go out with them 3 times a year, which is 3 week-long trips. And we go to Island Park, Idaho, Cook City, Montana, Toguti, Wyoming, a little bit of West Yellowstone when you're kind of in the Island Park area, Afton, not Colorado, Afton, Wyoming as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is
Alpine, Wyoming.
That is snowmobiling.
Yeah.
That's not riding in the ditch on the side of the county road from bar to bar. That's snowmobiling.
That's where you really do got to be in shape.
You do.
That
You answered my
10,000
question.
feet elevation will get to you quick.
Yes, you answered my question. Yes, absolutely. But ride the dirt bike to stay in shape for snowmobiling, crash a dirt bike, tear your knee apart.
Missed snowmobiling for 3 years.
And missed snowmobiling for 3 years and no more dirt bike.
And no more dirt bike.
But snowmobiling, you back at it.
Yeah.
Because this happened like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Snowmobiling back at it.
Good.
Learned my lesson really quick. Dirt biking that, at the time, I think my mentality would be okay now, but I'm still just not going to test it. But, when you jump into that hare scramble race and the gun goes off to start, and I think this hare scramble is just going to be a nice leisurely way to trail ride because there's nowhere to ride in Minnesota. I just reverted right back to 19-year-old self. It's time to go.
Yeah, I'm going to win this.
Yeah. Lesson learned.
Yeah, that's a lesson learned.
Yeah.
Not a non-house flipping lesson
Yeah.
learned, but a lesson learned. Well, Rick, thank you for coming on. Are there any closing thoughts you have before we wrap up?
No, I don't have any closing thoughts. Thanks for inviting me to this and getting to tell you all about the facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. The kind of idea here is to give people a feel for the division that you lead and work in and all the great work that your team does, and especially highlighting what you've done COVID. You've done a phenomenal job non-COVID, but you guys have really stepped up to the plate in this environment we're in. Everything you talked about related to how you keep us going and got us back up and running and keep us up and running is a huge testament to the great work you guys do. And to learn a little bit about you was a nice thing, a nice addition as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and plus, you've got a great first name.